What you looking at me like that for? What, man? Come on, you just drove down here? Yeah. Who is you, Sharon? For a long time, try not to remember. Try to forget all those times. At some point, you gotta decide for yourself who you gonna be. Can't let nobody make that decision for
you. You gonna tell him why the other boys kick his ass all the time? What's wrong?
I'm good.
No, I done seen good, and you ain't it.
Remember the last time I saw you?
You're my only. I'm your only. No. You gonna listen.
To who, Ma? Huh? To you? Who is you, man? I ain't seen you in like a decade. It's not what I expected. What did you expect?
Hello, stranger.
Yo. So I'm Rob Lee, and howdy and welcome to a brand new episode of MTR Podcast's Let's Watch It Again. This is the movie review podcast where we break down some of our favorite movies. And today, my guest is Christopher Chester, a designer and print collector living and creating in Baltimore. And I brought Christopher on because he knows movies. I mean, that's pretty much the reasoning. And today, we're reviewing Moonlight. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Rob. Glad to be here. I'm also very hyped to talk about Moonlight as a big A24 fan myself, but also just this movie is very impactful and kind of started off that trend of exploring masculinity, Black masculinity specifically in movies. So I'm excited.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that's a really good observation to start things off. So, this is kind of the first thing I'm going to ask for you in this scenario here. So I got a synopsis of the film, right? And because you're a person that's watched, we both recently watched it, I wanted to see if this is accurate. This synopsis is accurate. Because sometimes you go to a site and you're like, all right, synopsis of Moonlight. It's like, nah, that's not kind of what happened, actually. That's certainly not what went down. So I'm going to give you a synopsis, and then, some of these real data points, but we'll start off with the synopsis, and I want you to kind of, grade it with this sort of teacher-educator mindset that you might have as well. So let's see what we got. A look, this is the synopsis, a look at 3 defining chapters of the life of Sharon, a young Black man growing up in Miami. His epic journey to manhood is guided by the kindness, support, and love of the community that helped raise him. Moonlight.
I love the sense of epic journey, is growing up in the hood an epic journey, or is it just like a retelling of Children of Men? You know what I'm saying? Like, and also just the whole, the community embrace. And it's like, is it the whole community though?
It's a very small slither. It's like the noble drug dealer, if anything, and his girlfriend. And his mans and Sand. Sand's a part of this.
I would give that like a C+. That's like a good G-rated synopsis of that movie. If you have kids in the car and you want to know what Moonlight's about, that's a great synopsis.
I like it. I remember one of the things in terms of sort of these Black movies, he's sort of like grown up in the hood. And I just remember there was one scene before I get into these other bullet points, before we get into the trivia and all. I remember having to explain certain things to my white counterparts in a job I was in. It's like, why are they using detergent? Are they cleaning the tub? I was like, nah, it's called a bath. That's what he's doing.
Yeah, there are some subtle scenes in that movie. I'm glad that you brought that one up because they just kind of show you without saying it, but He boils the water on the stove with the hot pot because they don't have hot water in the house. He uses dish detergent because that's the soap that's everything soap. And like he's taking a bath because like there's no running water from the shower. So
Yeah.
like it's very like you really put in the scenario that Sharon is in. And it really shows you that like they are poor. Like there is no money in this house.
It goes downhill from when we first see his mom to when we last see his mom, or nearly when we last see his mom. But we'll get into that. So I want to start off with a few of these sort of factoids, and this first one's a little trepidatious as to when the movie was released, because I saw this as part of the Oscars Best Picture Showcase. And this is part of like 10 movies. So you know, I always look at when I saw the movie versus like when it came out. And I thought this came out in 2017, but it says it came out October 21st of 2016. So maybe a limited release or something like that. But this feels like it was a 2017 movie. But hey.
I think it's because the Oscars itself always premiere at the beginning of the new year for the previous year.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing this at the Charles in Baltimore City. And I know it was 2016 because there was the whole La La Land debacle at the Oscars, which also came out that year.
Look, I have a running bit about that, and I'm not going to go into it. It's just me going. It's just me going da 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 with the jazz hands. Because literally the colorism in this movie, it's just white people and John Legend. That's what we got. La La Land.
Oh my God! Like the Warner Brothers frog, just like dancing across the screen.
Michigan J. Frog.
Exactly.
So this movie was directed by Barry Jenkins. This was his second movie. I believe the first one was what is it? Melancholy. I know it's later in the notes. Not to bury the lead, it won the Academy Award for Best Picture in 2016 or into 2017. Box office was 65.3 million. Budget was $1.5 million. So just nothing. Just you never know what the marketing budget is for some of these movies, but it may have been double. It may have been an additional 3, but this is like a huge win for the type of movie this is. IMDb 7.4 out of 10. And I start looking at some of these, right? Mm-hmm. Where you start looking at the comparison from, one sort of rating system to another. And I used to really be into the rating systems. And now I kind of look at who's the valid one. You know what I mean? Like
yes.
Rotten Tomatoes, I feel like got a little corrupted. And I don't know if it's that in this instance. So Rotten Tomato gave this a 98%, Metacritic 99, and Google users, which I think is a little closer to what I'm looking for, is about 81. It's a really good movie, but I think being near perfect, I don't know. I don't know when you start seeing these 98, 99s. It's like, these are Madden ratings. These are Madden ratings. I know they're in Florida, but come on, guys.
I always get caught up in the rating system too. Like I used to go to Rotten Tomatoes for quite a bit just to see what people were looking. And then what I like most about Rotten Tomatoes is that I like the audience score versus like the actual like critic-based score, because that's what they kind of hone all that from. And it's always fun to see like what the audience hates and what the critics love, what the critics hate, and what the audience love. But it is always funny, like what is a perfect movie? And I feel like that's so subjective to everyone. And like when you start adding a label or a number or a grade to the movie, and it's like, what is the ultimate movie experience for you? And that varies for so many people now.
And one thing that I've recently added to this sort of scenario, because I'm a Letterboxd guy, and I always look for the one sentence reviews. It's like, this is insane. This is great. And Letterboxd, just for posterity's sake, gave this a 4.2 out of 5. So I was like, that's kind of good. I trust Letterboxd a little bit more, but definitely diving into, what people had to say about it, sort of what you were describing there with, I don't care about the critics as much. I care about the actual, like, the people that are going to see this movie. So there's usually, if there is a movie with murders in it, I don't think there are murders in this movie.
Yeah, nobody's like visibly killed at all. Like, yeah, nobody's actually killed at all. Yeah,
I usually have a body count in here, but this is not that type of movie. But I do have the tagline. Now, this kind of goes back to that sort of introduction, the synopsis. The tagline is, "This is the story of a lifetime."
Oh, that's the tagline?
Yes.
That feels like such stock wording, like stock copy, you know, like that's like the lorem ipsum for movies. Like you could put that for any movie. Like that could just
See,
be any Marvel movie right there with that tagline.
I was hoping to get that response from you because like, this is a little lacking. This is not quite there, guys. It's just,
And like, is it the story of a lifetime? Like,
it's
it's a
someone's
good
lifetime.
story. Like, it's a good life-based movie. But like, am I going to be 80? Like, damn, kids, y'all got to watch Moonlight.
Especially going into it, because it's like, now maybe retroactively, sure, you can do that. And it's like, yeah, it's definitely worth a watch under this context. But going into it, these things are decided upon in the marketing of the movie. So it's like,
Oh yeah, for
did
sure.
you guys know? You know what I mean? So now I want to get into some of the other things, and feel free to chime in if you have any like trivia that really like resonates and pops for you. But I definitely like to get into the weeds. I love trivia, and so I want to start off with Naomi Harris.
Oh yes.
She shot her entire role in 3 days. In between the promotion tour for Spectre. So this is really setting the stage. So back in 2015, due to a visa problem, she had to do all of her stuff the course of 15 years in 3 days. So,
Oh wow,
yeah, there's a fair amount of makeup on her at one point.
that's impressive. I didn't even realize that. Like, I read that they shot the whole movie in 25 days, but
Yeah.
just condensing that further to her scenes only being 3 days. It's intense, and she really acts in this movie.
Yeah, she does. She does. Let's see. According to cinematographer James Laxton, Moonlight only had a small budget of $1.5 million, and that was in Variety. Director Barry Jenkins confirmed that in a Q&A at the BFI in London, that this was indeed the budget, that this is a lower budget. This is the lower budget by any movie since like Rocky, like any like Best Picture since Rocky. And it was would have been, let's say, 1.1. So Rocky was like just comparatively like a small micro budget movie to do very well. Yeah, that's
I love that. I love seeing how a director just fully dives into their directorial style. And I actually remember reading some insight into the budget itself, and a lot of the actors were talking about how it made the filming experience more intimate, and specifically like how they themselves were almost involved in the directing and the scene setting, because of how like connected they were to the directing experience, and even how it played into the visual and styling for the movie. Specifically why the camera focus looks so soft and like not going for like super sharp or high tech, kind of a technical approach to the shooting.
Yeah.
And I love that. I think it actually aids into the story itself, because it's really not even a story that's focused on income or escaping income. If anything, it kind of critiques a lot of the income and the class itself. So it's very interesting to see the duality between how much money went into making this movie, what their limitations were, and the limitations in the film itself for the people who are struggling with money and how they kind of overcome that struggle to some degree.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like the sort of like comedy around it. And Barry Jenkins was like, I think the initial response to it was like, yeah, it's somewhere south of 500 million. And I was like, that's really funny.
Yeah, it is like truly a success for all the distributors and producers involved for that film.
And I think it shows you like, for people who want to make a thing that, has some closeness. And I think we'll get back into that a bit where, there are some relations to, Barry Jenkins' story or what have you that are represented in this, and just kind of getting this movie made. Seeing these sort of smaller budgeted things. It's like, if you have an idea and you're able to work with people and figure it out, it's like you got a tight schedule. You got like sort of like a month. You got a month to get this done. You got, pretty much at that time, probably your biggest people are Mahershala and Naomi Harris. And Mahershala's in the movie for like the first like 20 minutes. And as we talked about with Naomi, she's on set for 3 days and like peace out. So really maximizing it and really having a strategy in place.
Yeah, it's very impressive. Like, because Mahershala was doing a lot of, he was starting to come more into the scene, like publicly, with
Yeah.
the work that he was doing, and it was interesting to see him. And then even the additional actors that they were bringing in, like Janelle Monáe playing Teresa. So like we have like some light visibility between Naomi Harris, Janelle Monáe, Mahershala, and so it's like, of course, there's marketing in the fact that these are like black figures in the culture already. So people are going to be curious to learn a little bit more about this story. And then the lead, Chiron, being split between three different like age ranges, I thought was very interesting because he was unknown until the movie itself.
Yeah. So that scene, which I'm going to nominate as one of my favorite scenes a little bit later, but it's the scene where Juan is teaching Little how to swim. Mahershala is really teaching Alex R. Hibbert how to swim. The production started,
Really?
he did not know how to swim. So that's actually not acting. This is actually, a real thing.
Yeah, that's a beautiful scene. Wow, I didn't even realize that. That is probably one of my favorite scenes as well. And we'll definitely talk more about that scene a little bit later. I have some thoughts.
Absolutely. See, both Barry Jenkins and writer Terrell Alvin McCraney's vision was pretty clear and singular in that both men grew up in the same Liberty City neighborhood of Miami with mothers who struggled with drug addiction. Roughly 80% of the film was shot on location there in one of the most poverty-stricken areas in the U.S. Initially, the production was apprehensive due to safety issues, and Jenkins got the word out, like, look, nobody's going to bother you. It's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. And Naomi Harris said that she never felt so appreciated and have such an easy shoot in a movie.
That's incredible. I did read and know about the Liberty City connection with Barry Jenkins, and especially connecting to his childhood too. It's very interesting when like a director and a writer both start to reflect their own personal thoughts and their personal upbringing in their work, because it feels more real. You don't have to actually say that things are bad. You can show, like, there are ways to show that things are bad or a situation is bad. Even calling back to the whole bathtub scene again, but even thinking about like thematically children being forced to like become adults early on, and seeing that kind of visualized with Little not speaking a word through any of the scenes in Act One.
Yeah. In an interview, Barry Jenkins said that the three actors who play Sharon never met during production. He wanted each to kind of build their own persona during their respective segments with no influence from the other portrayals. The same technique was used with the actors who played Kevin.
That is really cool. I love that, because then, there is really no connection. You don't even see pictures of young Sharon between each of the acts. Like, and it's not that anybody's like documenting him by any means. He's just kind of exploring and growing in each particular step. And I think that's fascinating, because we as the viewer know that's him as he's older, and there's just little things that kind of confirm that. But I think that is highly fascinating. They didn't communicate at all.
Is there a certain view that Sharon is just a Pokemon?
Like he just evolves at each step.
and if that is the case, is Black like, what is he like? He's like Charizard. Like what is he like? What is his?
Black is definitely like Charizard. Like Black comes into his like confidence and identity, and like
Little threatening.
Little is like the teenage Little is just kind of timid still. He's like starting to find his confidence, and then like the baby form is little kid Chiron. I love that.
The film is based on an unproduced play, In Moonlight, Black Boys Look Blue, by MacArthur fellow Terrell Alvin McCraney, who Liberty City, gang.
Love that. I didn't realize it was unproduced.
It's a thing. I think like when we start looking at items that are written, and I'm starting to think about this from a sort of podcast perspective of, people will maybe produce a play or write a play or have something in mind, but maybe can't get it out there in the form that they want to. Maybe podcasting is a way of doing it, that it's out there and maybe it gets picked up and adapted from that it exists, that people can consume it. And I've just been thinking about that more and more. And this almost gives me a version of that. Like, the play may not have come out, but it ultimately was adapted into a movie.
Yeah, and I feel like at least in this form, it's more accessible.
Yeah.
I wish more plays were recorded. Like, I do like going to plays and seeing Broadway productions, but there's almost a limit to who can actually see them or like access to them, which is why I enjoyed watching Hamilton when it was on Disney Plus.
Same.
It got a lot of. It was very fun to watch people critique that play
Yeah.
because it became everybody was talking about it, but also nobody had seen it. So which was kind of funny to think about.
I remember looking at, I went over there to a cafe in the whole Micah neighborhood, and it was two mids that were leaving. I was like, I think Hamilton's a little overrated. I looked at it, I was like, sure, your screenplay is doing well. I'm sure everyone cares. I'm sure everyone cares about your opinion.
Exactly. Like, I'm not writing plays.
Like, no.
This is a lot of work.
So an early meeting with Brad Pitt helped director Barry Jenkins get the necessary funds to distribute in a distribution deal he required for the movie.
So I didn't know that because Brad Pitt runs Plan B, right? That's his
Yes.
production company. And I like all of Plan B's movies. They also are the production house for If Beale Street Could Talk and The Last Black Man in San Francisco, which is another one of my favorite black masculinity films.
So this goes into the sort of closeness we were describing earlier within the cast and the crew. So budgetary constraints for the movie were such that the cast had to share one trailer for costume, hair, and makeup and one restroom to be shared by the cast and crew.
Wow. That's, shooting for a budget for real.
That Miami heat.
Yeah, for real. And one trailer, like they had the school trailer out there at that probably.
Like, bro, can you get out of the shower? I need that. I need to cool off. Like, are you done yet? I think this is why Mahershala is wearing a do-rag for most of the movie. He's like, I'm not brushing this. This is.
Exactly. I know I would.
So this aligns with one of the things we were talking about. This is sort of the beginning, right? So Mahershala won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for this film with less than 20 minutes of on-screen time.
I mean, his role is so strong in this movie, even for step one. And what's wild about his character is that you feel his presence in the other two acts.
Yep.
And
definitely in the third act because Black is playing a version of him.
Yeah, it's he almost becomes him at that point, and even is like taking on this mentor role with his own, dealers that he's overseeing. Yeah. And I'm sure we'll talk about that relationship a bit more, but
absolutely,
it's wild.
So this was filmed, as we touched on, over the course of 25 days in October and November of 2015 in South Florida. Let's see. Again, Barry Jenkins was inspired by his own childhood in Miami, where he says he always was surrounded by very lush green and beautiful golden sunsets. He grew up in an awesome neighborhood with some very dark things happening. He feels as though his childhood was a beautiful struggle.
That's a good way of putting it. I feel like a beautiful struggle is a great way of putting living in poverty.
Yeah, because I think, I lived in the projects or what have you. We never knew. We never knew that this is what a thing was. We were able to get like pizza bowlies. My dad had a car, and we saw different things that were like, oh, as an adult, you kind of like contextualize it, like, oh, that's what I was seeing. That was a robbery. Oh, or whatever.
My mother and I talked about this one time. I remember she posed a question to me. She's like, "When did you realize that you grew up poor?" And I was like, oh, wow. I was like, I guess I never really thought about that. And she's like, it's a consciousness moment. And I was like, maybe when I got to Micah, like maybe when I started attending that and I was meeting people who like had more money than I could comprehend at the time, or just like weren't thinking about things in the same vein that I was. But I remember her just kind of posing that and be like, wait a minute, we're not all poor?
Everyone's not eating rice cakes and asparagus. I mean, that's what I was eating. It was just frozen asparagus and maybe expired rice cakes. Who knows? It's fine. It's fine. Where's that Dawn dish soap?
Yeah. Oh man.
So, and I know we're going to have ours a little bit later, but apparently Barry Jenkins' favorite scene in this film was an impromptu sequence of Paula staring straight at the camera into an overcranked at 400 FPS, so frames per second, and it was that last minute decision to specifically engage with the audience and have Paula's character do that, and I think they show it twice.
Yes, I do remember that. That's like their scene transition. Shot. I like that shot a lot.
Let's see. The song that plays in the diner, "Hello Stranger" by Barbara Lewis. So Barry Jenkins made the decision to actually play the song on the jukebox while they were filming. So it was in the background while they were actually filming, setting that sort of mood.
Nice. Okay. I can see that.
Because a lot of times you have something that goes in the back. It's like you're already... with the advent of more and more green screen and things of that nature, or post-production sort of tactics, that it's like less stuff that you're interacting with. And it's like, yeah, dance. It's like, can I get a song? Can I get something? Eat. It's like, this is... I'll put it in context. There was a movie. It's not good. It's not in this sort of class, but I think it was A Fall from Grace. And I just remember it's a Tyler Perry movie, and I just remember watching it, and it's so many funny things that happen in it. Like Makad Brooks just goes hard, and literally he's wearing a hot top fade, and he's like, "Ashtray, bitch!" And I was like, "Wow, this is amazing." And there's a scene in a diner in it where it's a guy. He's in the shot. He's eating from a plate that has no food in it, and it keeps showing him. And I was like. And I'm watching with my partner. I was like, "Yo, can you pause it right here?" Because we do this thing where if we're watching a movie, we count like it's soccer, it's football. It's like, all right, how much like stoppage play have we had? Like, if this 2-hour movie takes us 3 hours to watch, it has to be a bad movie. We've had half of the time we've stopped. Yeah. We do that.
That's a fun game. Okay.
And we look at the number of production companies or writers.
Yeah, we do that too. Definitely looking at the number of production companies is a good one to take a look at. I've never done the stoppage counter.
You should do that. It's fun. It's very fun. I think at a point when I was watching, Malignant, I was like, can we pause it real quick? I think we were at our like fifth or sixth pause, and we were the first 20 minutes.
That was me watching Barbarian.
We'll talk. We'll be talking about that. I had this sort of realization that kind of like washed over me. I was like, oh, this is just a bad movie. And I was able to enjoy it from that point on because I was really like, so I hear this is good. Let's figure it out. I was like, oh, this is shit. Oh, got it.
Going into a movie like knowing that it's probably bad is always a very rewarding experience because there's like less expectation.
Yeah. So the light flashes, and I kind of noticed this yesterday because this is, I think, maybe the second time. I've only seen it in the movie twice, but I tend to remember movies really well. The light flashes and the transitions between chapters are actually an out-of-focus digital time code from the camera slate. During filming, the actors were sprayed with oil so their skin would shine on the camera, and the crew would hold this running slate against the lenses to protect them from the sprays. And Barry Jenkins wanted to keep that code in because he thought it was a good effect.
That is really cool. I love like analog effects like that. I couldn't even have figured that out,
Because I was like, why is this in there? Because I was looking, I was like, is this something that is like really too in focus? Are we really up on something? And to give you some extra context, I was watching, because I was doing another review, I was watching this after I watched CB4, because I'm doing a review on CB4. Two very different movies.
Yes.
So producer Dee Dee Gardner is the first woman to win an Academy Award for Best Picture. Her first was 12 Years a Slave in 2013.
Okay, yeah. I've only seen that movie once. That's all.
I refuse.
That's a hard movie. That's a one and done movie right there.
Because I mean, isn't Magneto like a slave owner or something?
Yeah.
Isn't that what's happening? Am I bugging? I call actors by their Marvel characters.
That is so funny.
Moonlight has a very diverse score, with music ranging from orchestral to chopped and screwed. And that's a big shout out to Nicholas Britell, who's the composer who decided to chop and screw the orchestra to create a unique sound. So it's chopped and screwed orchestral music in this movie.
That is really cool. I think it also speaks to the culture and where they are as well, where they're shooting. I noticed that on my second watch. I was just like, oh, this is because they would play the orchestra, especially like in transitions. Yeah. And then in scenes where they're not transitioning, it would be chopped and screwed.
This is the first LBGTQIX. It's a lot of other letters. They only have 4 in here. The LBGT film and a film featuring an all-black cast who won an Academy Award for Best Picture. Mahershala is the first person of Muslim faith to win an Academy Award for acting. So Naomi Harris is very reluctant to play a crack addict in this movie. She always has this sort of teetotaling persona. And so this was like kind of playing against type for her. She's like, all right, I had to look at some. In preparation, she spent a month researching the lives of drug addicts by watching videos on YouTube.
Oh my God, what a depressing rabbit hole. I mean, it is really rough to watch her character deteriorate between all 3 acts.
Yes. When you first see her, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, she's just a mom that's not around. Maybe she worked a double. And then it's like, oh, you suck. Oh,
yeah. You're like, oh, like this isn't going where I think it's going.
I think you're going to know this one. This is not even like, this is when you find out this is what this character's name actually means, you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So Charon is the name of a centaur in Greek mythology known as the wounded healer.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I heard the name somewhere, but I did not know that it was of Greek origin. Have to look deeper into that. I like that.
Because then it almost does this thing of, because, you know, like Robert Christopher is these are kind of like, oh, these are kind of like regular, just regular names, I guess, or non-ethnically coded names. And initially upon watching, I was like, that's a black name, right? And it's like, no, actually it's a Greek name. And it shows maybe sort of that overlap that I've played the resume game before. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
It's like all right, what is my brother's name is a lot different from mine. That Antoine is spelled very black. And I'm like, all right, so.
Yeah, I have a very white passing name for sure. Like very Americanly ambiguous. I was looking at like you.
But sometimes they look at that middle name. Sometimes it's like, Jamarcus? Like, I don't know about that.
Like James, huh?
Like, all right, James who?
James.
It was like, yeah, they got people named Tyrone. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's see. There is a song because there's some music cues in this movie, and I think there are several good. It's a good use of music in this movie. There is an Aretha Franklin song called "One Step Ahead" that plays twice in the film. The first act, it is in the classroom, after Sharon gets home from the swimming lesson. Also you can hear it in the diner on the jukebox in the third act.
I love that. I was thinking about that song because it's pretty popular sample too.
Yeah. Let's see. This is the second film to be officially screened at the National Museum of African American History and Culture when it opened in D.C. And this was in September of 2016.
What was the first film? I like how we both know.
It's like, I don't know. I don't know, guys. What did y'all choose? It's like The Wiz. Like, excuse me? So this again goes to your bullet point about kind of where Mahershala was at in this sort of ascent. And this was part of the Best Picture showcase as well. For me, both Mahershala and Janelle Monáe both were in Hidden Figures as well.
Yes.
Yeah, the same year.
Same year. That was a good movie rollout.
Mm-hmm. And it's like their roles in terms of size were kind of flipped.
Yeah,
they
really
like her role is smaller in Moonlight, but it's still, I think, an integral role, and she's around for more than one act. Let's see. So Barry Jenkins started writing the screenplay for this movie in Brussels at a bar called Lord Byron. This is the first Academy Award Best Picture winner for a black filmmaker who directed and wrote the screenplay. See, and it was the 89th Academy Awards. Do we want to talk about that like right now? Do we want to just kind of wedge into that right now? Like we can
wedge into it. Yeah, we
Yeah.
could get into it because I was watching it live when it happened.
To my family, maman, papa, Jeff, hommage, je vous adore. Matt Pluff, you kicked this off. And Damien Chazelle, we're standing on your shoulders. We lost, by the way, but, you know.
Guys, I'm sorry. No, there's a mistake. Moonlight, you guys won Best Picture.
Moonlight won. Come on, this is not a joke. This is not a joke. I'm afraid they read the wrong thing.
This is not a joke. Moonlight has won Best Picture.
So I was watching it live, and so we do the whole. So this is March Madness for us in some regards. It's like
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
So we do the Best Picture showcase, and it's like, all right, let's get to this point. So we're watching it, and I've been making fun of La La Land the entire night with my jazz hands, and then we get to it, and I'm very much caught on because I observe. I'm very much caught on like what's happening here. And I think this is around that point. I don't know if this was before or after the whole Oscar So White thing was going on and all of that. And I remember they make the announcement and I was like, what is all of this going on in the background? And my girl's like, what? She walks away. She's like, this is bullshit. I can't believe it. La La Land, this is bullshit. Jazz is dead. It was something like that. She was just going left. She's like, I'm drinking some more wine. And I was like, no, come back. And she was like, why are they talking and why does Warren Beatty look confused? I was like, well, I don't know. Maybe he thinks he's still in Dick Tracy. I don't know. But and then when they make the announcement, I still think it was a little short shrift because it's just bad. That was a bad sort of, flub, if you will. What was your take on that? And tell me about your experience there.
I thought it was wild because everybody was very confused on the stage. And then the cast Moonlight barely got to get on stage to say anything.
Right.
They didn't get to actually like give any speeches or like kind of dive in. And like somebody else had to cut. It was almost like they weren't trying to say it at first. And then somebody like took, if I remember correctly, somebody took the prompt. Somebody else had it and took the prompt and had the right one. And it was talking about they like came up and announced it and then did the whole switcheroo, but then they didn't give them the time that they needed. But I thought it was very funny. I thought there was a lot of dark humor in that. I didn't read it like as being racist, truthfully, because I was just like, the Oscars are for people that watch a lot of movies. All right. So like this won't be a defining black moment until like 3 months from now. Once we get like all like access this movie and actually see it for ourselves. But it was nice to kind of see it come to fruition. I watched La La Land. You know what? I even like La La Land. I don't even mind. I hate to say it. The movie, I like the way it's shot. It's got some other problems, but I like, what's his name? Damien
Cazale?
Yeah, Damien Chazelle, the director. I like his movies, so like he got me with La La Land. But I did think that Moonlight was a much better movie at the time that it came out. But yeah, it didn't get its due. It didn't get its shine, and I think people just kind of brushed it off. And I think it was necessary for people to see that this is an independent film that won. It was a huge win for production houses like A24 and Plan B in an era where we have a lot of just like, we have a lot of manufactured like films. Half the stuff that comes out is either comic related or like series related. We don't have like a lot of original content in theaters anymore. So it was very important to kind of see like a first time director covering a very like not niche topic, but a specific topic within a minority background. And so, it was like very sensitive overall. And I thought that it was very bold for it to have won and almost unexpected. I think the unexpected was just, our tolerance at the time and also just how people were managing like their expectations as well, thinking about it as like automatically going in that a black film wouldn't get this kind of accolade or nomination. And it cleaned up. It got quite a few awards and nominations in that circuit. And, I hadn't watched it until we were prepping for this show, but I remember seeing it in theaters, and then on my second time, I was like, damn, this is a good movie. Like,
Yeah, and this is Barry Jenkins' second movie. This is the first one was Medicine for Melancholy, which was from 2008.
yeah.
So this is his first one in about 8 years. So it was a dude that's not really known for directing. Kind of just crushing it, right? And yeah, I'll say, and maybe it's very old. It's very a lot of the things that have happened in that sort of circuit, the Academy Awards, is very old and dated. And we've had some moments most recently where, and I think when someone's moment, because we care about moments for whatever reason, I don't know why, I kind of prefer the Prince thing of I don't do it for awards or what have you.
Yeah.
I think if that's what we're doing, if we have to care about like Taylor Swift not getting her moment, then maybe we do the following year where this is where we botched it last year. So like in the 2017 for 2017, Man in the Beginning, it's like, yo, look, here's the full cast from Moonlight. Mm-hmm. They got 5 minutes. Here, do your drop your mic or whatever, and maybe Questlove should get that in the next one because his thing was definitely stepped on with a slapped on, if you will.
I agree.
So I got two more. I got two more bullet points here that I thought they were very interesting. So, despite the characters supposed to be the same age, Andre Holland, who plays adult Kevin, and Trevante Rhodes, who plays adult Black, he's Black at this moment, they're 10 years apart in age. And you can kind of see some of those fine lines creeping out of. I was like, jail was hard on you, wasn't it, bro?
They're supposed to be the same age.
Yeah.
Like actual actor wise, like in real life.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. They're because I think when we see the movie, so if this was 10 years, because I got to do that math, they're supposed to be 28.
Oh, whoa!
I've been 28. Because if you look at it, like it's over the course of 15 years, and we're running into Little, and he's like 12, 13.
I mean, that's that Florida sun right there,
Yo, that's that HGH that Black was on. I was like, sir, less creatine, brother.
That's why people in the Black community got to wear sunscreen. All right.
Stop. So this is the last one. This is the last one, and I thought this was great because I love action movies. So both Mahershala Ali and Trevante Rhodes featured in the Predator film franchise. Ali appears in Predators from 2010. Who he's great. He's like I think he's like in a massage or something.
I forgot that.
And Rhodes is in The Predator, which is not so great, and it's just a bad movie, but he's in it. So there you go. Both of them have been in Predator franchise.
They need to find a way to like link, do a little continuity, see how they can like include them in, but they won't.
It's almost like when in the Star Wars like sort of reboots or whatever that was, that Finn is a toy that came out as like Finn Calrissian. I was like, hold up, let's not. Every Black person in a far, far galaxy from here can't be related. So I want to go into this part here. This is kind of the back end, the more of analysis side of things. I want to talk about impact of the movie, which we kind of touched on a little bit, and some of the themes that are there, some observations, favorite scenes, and kind of like final thoughts, MVP, things of that nature. So I want to start it off with themes and impact. What are your takes on this movie and the last 5 to 6 years? Like how has this like shaped how we kind of talk about Black masculinity, the intersection between Blackness, masculinity, vulnerability, and even this theme of water, which is in there, and we talked about a little bit with the swimming lesson.
Why you always letting people pick on you, man?
What you mean?
You always letting them pick on you.
So, what I gotta do?
All you gotta do, show these niggas you ain't soft.
But I ain't soft.
I know. But it don't mean nothing if they don't know. Come on. You want these fools to pick on you every day?
I think it was a good entryway into Black identity, and especially exploring the complexity of masculinity, and it kind of its critique of like toxic masculinity I thought was interesting. Like there's all these expectations that men shouldn't do certain things. There's the scene where teenage Kevin and teenage Sharon are talking on the beach, and they're sharing a blunt, and they, Kevin's like, they talk about crying, you know?
Yeah.
And Kevin's like, I don't cry. You think I have time to cry? Like trying to play it tough, and Tyrone opens up, and he's just like, I cry all the time.
Yep.
Like, and so how he even relates that to how he wish he could just like wash away, like how he would just turn into tears if he could. And I thought that was interesting. And specifically, like, it's not, the writing isn't from a perspective where it's trying to like diminish or destroy like what it is to be heterosexual, right? It's just it's observing like the lack of safety in masculinity, you know, and how how boys or black men have to be strong, and they have to be these adult figures even when they're not ready to be adults. Like Sharon never really gets to be a kid. Like we see him playing with the other boys, but he dreads having to go back home because that's when he has to be an adult. That's when he has to like take care of his mother or get told to go somewhere else. But like there are very few moments even in his teenage years where he gets to like just be a teenager. We don't actually see him hang out with anybody other than Kevin. And even when he is hanging with Kevin, it's like, you know, we see him talk the most with him, and barely even Teresa. Which is also interesting to think about there.
And we have this sort of, like you were touching on, like in each one of these instances, I think there's this sort of duality where you can kind of open up a little bit. You know, he can open up around Kevin, he can open up around Teresa, but on the backside of it with Kevin, there's the bullies that are there, Terrell and all of that. And then you have going home, you know, have you. It's like, how are you safest with a guy that always has a gun on him? You know what I mean? And it's a thing, and I think this sort of sage-like advice, I think that comes from an unlikely source, and being someone that is a dope dealer and having what comes with it. And I thought, you know, sort of this scene, right? You talk about crying, right? That Mahershala is like in tears actually when he has to tell him like, oh yeah, I'm be selling them drugs.
That's one of my.
From me.
I think that is probably my favorite scene in the movie, and that really captures Mahershala's ability to act in that role, where we see Mahershala dealing with his own duality and identity, both becoming the caretaker for Sharon, but also destroying his own family because like he is supplying his mother with drugs. And also Juan Mahershala's character acknowledging that like he is sorry, that he is at fault for at some points the life that Sharon is forced to live. And him crying and coming to tears of that is him knowing that he's at fault. He doesn't try to like play it off. He doesn't try to hide his guilt or his emotions there. And I think that's a great, you know, overview of like what a relationship between an adult and a child could be. Like the adult showing that they are at fault, showing that they are vulnerable to children, and what it shows to be vulnerable when you're put in these positions of being questioned and knowing that like you are at fault for those things. And I think it shows something that's rare in Black communities, where there is a equal level between parent and child, and not so much the ownership of parent and child, where we see Sharon's mother owning him, like, you know, anytime he has, you mine. It's like, I'm your mother. Like, you're going to do what I say. You have money on you. Teresa gave you money. That's my money now. Like these things that I have seen, not in my own life, but I've observed in like, you know, growing up with people and seeing this kind of forced adulthood expectation. And it's interesting that they would use a dope dealer to show vulnerability in that way. And I love his character for that.
Yeah, I think, you know, when I start thinking about this movie and upon rewatching it, the first act is probably my favorite because of that, because you get a lot of that in there, and it's not to diminish from it, but it's more and more closer to, because I think it's seeing it as an adult. You know what I mean? Like, oh no, I've been to this part of being a kid is so far removed, and not having that. You know, that sort of experience, it felt more like fiction. And it's like, oh, yeah, like, you know, this sort of role that Juan is playing, I've been in that spot before. Now as an adult, I've never been in the little spot. You know what I mean? And it's really interesting to see that, and how, using him almost as an avatar to kind of switch out some of these things. Like water is a big thing, right? And the whole swimming lesson, and using him as the vehicle to do that. Because, black people don't swim. We don't swim at all. We don't touch the water.
I don't know how to swim.
By the way.
I don't know how to swim at all. And it's,
I always look us up.
Yeah, for real. Like, what I got to do? But yeah, I was like, it's fun to kind of see that, because many a friend have tried to teach me how to swim, but I'm like, damn, do I not trust anybody to teach me how to swim? Like, there's that moment of trust.
It's like, just put your head, in my hand, brother. It's like, I ain't doing all that.
I ain't doing all that. Like, you good.
I just I'm 6'4". I'll just stand up in the water. That's cool, right?
Yeah, exactly. Do that thing where your hands are down in the water. You're like pretending you're swimming, but you're only in the shallow end.
It's like, you are just walking. You are Godzilla.
Yeah, exactly. You're just doing your crab walk in the water at that point.
Have you ever run into this sort of, because I know I've gotten it, you don't want to be perceived as soft because you're going to get bullied more. Like, that sort of conversation that happens earlier in the movie. And, there's a lot going on in that scene. But still, I think that sentiment is there. And I just remember having those instances where getting sort of like bullied or what have you, because it's like, I was always a big kid, but I was the one that stood out. So it's like, same. Let's pick on this guy and let's see if he's soft or not. And, it's definitely a conversation and a consideration that happens.
I think it's interesting, because there were moments in my childhood where I would definitely pretend to be much stronger, or like kind of give off offense that I'm like aggressive than I really was. And I think that kind of just came with like the expectations of boys. Like, we all heard the term like boys don't cry, and like keep your chin up and things like that.
Stiff upper lip.
It's
just British. It's just British. It's fine. It's fine.
It's hard though. Like, I don't think I had many family figures that would say stuff like that to me. But I definitely can think about the transition when people were starting to like think about like how men should be perceived, or like men should like, begin to open up. And it's kind of probably around in my early 20s when I started to see that, like the early 2010s, where I was just thinking about what was expected of me, like being okay to start to open up. And I think a lot of those early like forced close offs and like this forced pretending of like being strong has kind of affected a lot of communication, at least in Black communities. And like, even in myself, I struggle to communicate how I feel at times, because sometimes there is the perceived notion that I got to just see it through, and that I don't have the time to process those feelings. And like Chiron, even in this, like in Act 2, after they do the stand up knockdown game, and he goes home and he puts his face in the ice bath, and like he looks at himself and it's like he's not even crying anymore. He's just got to see it through. He already has another goal in mind, and we know what their goal is for what the follow-up is. But like he doesn't speak at all. You know exactly what he's saying. Like there's not any moment in this movie where he is crying by himself. There are a few times where he starts to tear up, but we never see Little, at least in Act 1, cry. We barely see him cry in Act 2. And it's not until Act 3 that we even see that he sheds a tear.
Yeah, because it's sort of like this line that he said, and I think a lot of us run into that, where we build ourselves back up harder. And once we have one of those sort of breaking moments, and it's like you're restoring the foundation in some regards. And it's at a point where it's like the thing my therapist used to tell me, the pressure cooker. It's like there's steam that comes out, but eventually it's going to boil over. And I think what we're getting there at a certain point is it's boiling over, but it is this certain point where we get a lot of those payoffs in that third act, and we're going to go back into that in a moment. So I'm going to talk about some observations real quick, and this was, I think, definitely good. So I think this movie has a certain visual language that looks really good. They shoot black folk well, which I think is one of those things of when you have black folks involved in the cinematography and the shooting and sort of how we're directing things, you get those different shades. You don't just get, just wow, everyone looks like lead. Everyone is the color of my beard. It's like, what is this? And I like
just unlockable
it,
fighting game characters, just like that silhouette of like choose your black fighter. Like at this
why
point,
is that Noob Sabat? Like why is this? I think Juan confessing again, going back to that.
What you doing here?
Detention, man. Ames called me with this trick in the stairway.
Damn.
Yeah.
With who?
Damn, you nosy, nigga. Nah, I'm playing, yo.
And you're very spot on. It's like I look at him as almost this enlightened uncle, and it was very, that just great acting, and it was sad. It was sad, and not having to see it, but I think that was just a point. It wasn't like this is kind of the end, and that's the last time we see Juan. Juan is referenced a couple of times, but that's the last time we see him. But it doesn't mean that's the last time that they interacted, because it's not like, yeah. And our boy Kevin is a wild boy. There's one scene every time that he's talking, I'm like, you are ridiculous. Yeah, I was banging this shorty's back out. I just wanted some head. I was like, hold up. I was like, run that back. And,
yes.
I mean, I did this thing, right? I did this thing, and I just remember when I watched it, like I said, I've only seen it twice, and upon rewatching it, I laughed at the same part I laughed at when I first saw it, so I knew it was still effective. I'm going to ask you, which part was I laughing at?
It
has to do with Kevin.
Was it the first dream?
It may have been the beach.
It was the beach scene? Oh.
After the beach scene, when he tries to dap him up, he looks at his hand and then daps him up. I start laughing so hard. I'm like, yo, you're still a dude. You're like, hey, you can use the other hand, bro. Like, what's that's yours, brother.
That's funny because I was looking at that scene again, and I didn't catch that the first time, but I caught it the second. And I could just tell that they were like taken back into the moment, but taken out. But I thought you were talking about the dream when like Kevin tells him at school about he's blowing Shorty's back out. That he has the dream about him doing it, like the sex dream. Was like, you good, Black?
No, that's actually great. I was like, yo, can you do something different? Can you be a different person for like 5 seconds?
But yeah, that car scene is hilarious.
So I want to go into favorite scenes, unless you had any observations you wanted to throw in there real quick. But if not, we can go into these favorite scenes.
Yeah, let's get into the favorite scenes. And I'll probably talk on a couple observations too.
Okay. I think my favorite scenes are the swimming scene.
Hey, let your head rest in my hand. Relax. I got you. I promise. I'm not gonna let you go. Hey, man, I got you. There you go. 10 seconds. See that right there? You're in the middle of the world, man.
I think it's both of these scenes are together. I think it's Juan confronting Paula and then him admitting to selling drugs to her.
Motherfucker. Don't give me that you gotta get it from somewhere, shit nigga. I'm getting it from you. But you gonna raise my son though, right? You ever see the way he was?
You watch your damn mouth.
Yeah,
she was on one, literally.
That scene, yeah, she was on one literally. Like when, and it's interesting because he already knows her car. And the thing is, before we even get to this scene, Juan already knows who she is, and like he almost doesn't know what to do. And I can tell that he's trying to almost have conversations with her, but she's shutting him off because like she doesn't want Sharon to know they have a relationship. And that scene is very funny when she's like, what do you want to do? Raise my son? And it's just like,
you see the way he walks? Like, whoa.
Yeah. And that scene was crazy because it ends up tying to that final scene where he's like telling him to keep his head up. Don't let nobody call you that slur.
Yeah.
And like, it's interesting because his mother doesn't even support him. You know, this boy is barely 10 years old, and like your mom is already like, my son's gay, and like
she's
do
using the
not care
top tier
for it.
slur. She's using the top tier slur.
Yeah.
I like when Juan is like, nah. Well, what it is, and then it's going well, and then Teresa's like, kind of stop right
Like,
there.
yeah.
It's like,
Teresa's
well,
like, cut
unless
it
you
out.
into that, unless you like, she's like, nah. I love revenge. So obviously, when Terrell has a seat, as it were, I'm like, yes. I'm like, get him out of here.
Fuck off me, nigga!
I'm glad they rewarded the viewer with that, because that's very much what teenagers would do. You know, like that kind of built up rage, that aggression, like not knowing how to take those feelings out, and like that how aggression builds up. I thought was a good way of how they show that. I particularly also like the fight scene, because even though Terrell has no idea that like Sharon and Kevin have this relationship, Kevin is forced to hide himself, you know. But Chiron, who, you know, is following Juan's advice, is present. He's visible. He's not backing down. His head is held high, and he's just taking all of these hits, you know, and he's defending himself in a way that is kind of multi-layered. Like, he's defending himself in his sexuality. He's defending himself in his confidence as a person, and also like he's fighting for what he believes in, which I think is a beautiful scene.
And not being soft, and even echoing what I think happens in that prior, I think it's the prior scene where he goes over to Teresa's house because he gets kicked out, and she's like, no, we keep our heads held high here at this house, at this table. Yeah.
100%. And it's those elements of Juan that stick with you throughout the whole movie, even in Act 2 with that scene, and even in Act 3 when, you know, Chiron basically becomes Juan at that point. Another
Juan
one of
origins.
Juan origins. Speaking of Act 3, my favorite scene that almost made me cry was the scene where he visits his mother at the rehabilitation center.
I have that one. Yeah.
I love you, Sharon. I do. I love you, baby. I mean, you ain't gotta love me. Lord knows I did not have love for you when you needed it. I know that.
And man, that scene is rough. Like, I think I took a couple notes on that. And it's wild to watch like a parent understand how their actions have like destroyed a relationship with their children. It's another thing to see like a parent apologize for that. And her line when she's like, she still has love for him even though he doesn't love her is like, that's like deep. That's some serious like good writing in the way that she's acting it out. And this is the only time that we see, one of the few times that we see Sharon cry, and it's just like a silent tear, you know, because he can't look at her.
Because he goes, he does the thing that I've done a little bit where it's like, oh, I'm going to react real quick. And it's like, yeah, what you gonna do for me? I was like, oh, that sounds familiar. When he gets something, he like raises. I was like, it's like, yes, you're doing the thing.
You're doing the thing.
but I think it shows, and as far as like watching it from a critical lens, it shows like this is how they were able to shoot and maximize Naomi Harris being on set, because she's only interacting with like each actor at different stages. She's acting briefly with Mahershala and the Alex Hibbert, and then she's acting with each Sharon at different ages or what have you. So it's like, let me get my scene with Travante, let me get my scene with Ashton Saunders, and then let's keep it rolling.
It's interesting that she is also the only character that interacts with Sharon at all three acts.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was nice that they show his mother at that stage where she's like she's trying to get better, but also she knows that her health is poor, and like they could have killed her off screen, but I don't think it would have had
Yeah.
the same effect as Juan dying off screen.
Yeah.
Like we
And
kind of
this,
needed to see that older child parent relationship to kind of show that like relationships evolve over time, and that it is difficult to balance the love you may have, the love you may or may not have for a parent, and just how you see them in your life as well.
yeah. Let's see. I got really two more things, and then we got that final verdict.
All right.
So,
Yeah.
let's see. So, who's the MVP of this movie? And make your case, if you will.
Ooh, MVP of this movie.
Is it A24? Is it is it
Oh
Mahershala?
man.
Is it Barry Jenkins?
I think it is. I'll have to say Barry Jenkins and probably A24 on this, and Plan B, because this is a story that probably otherwise would not have gotten picked up by anybody. Like no bigger house would have made this film. I think it was also very bold and also empowering of Barry Jenkins, who is a heterosexual man, to make this movie, and also not put too much of his own commentary into like what he feels, his stance at least on sexuality, and I do find that is like very telling, of allyship without having to say I'm an ally, because he's telling stories that wouldn't be told otherwise. And so with Moonlight being made and having written that, like we can get additional stories that continue to be explored in this particular area of Black identity. So I would definitely say, like, if I'm looking at like a who made the movie perspective, character wise, probably Juan for me is the MVP character in the movie. He's a very complex character who's only on screen for 20 minutes, and we barely know his life. But we know that he's a man of compassion. We know he's a complex individual. He's a very gray area character, and I like when people explore the gray in characters and in television and movies, because it's a real reflection of real life. Typically, like Juan knows what he's doing is bad, but Juan also still sees the good in people.
Yeah, and like I've like it's for me it's Mahershala. Yeah, and I definitely I think your positions on each one have that credence, and I definitely 100% on it. But I think it's Mahershala for me. It's part of this really strong run. In 2016, he was in 6 movies. Then,
My man was killing it.
And then, you get, him and Roxanne in 17. Then Green Book, he gets Best Supporting Actor again. And that movie has its problems, but, I think it got some weird hate more than it's just a bad movie. Did some voiceover work for Into the Spider-Verse, Alita Battle Angel. And it's like, yo, you got Blade in this time as well. It's like, you're the guy in this one for being a guy that was a rapper, at one point. And
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, he has 2 albums from 2006 and 2007.
Oh my God! All right, I'm going to have to do like a Mahershala deep dive.
And he's a fellow, he's a fellow Aquarius too. So I gotta,
Okay, yes. Welcome to the tribe. Let's go.
So this is the last question I got for you.
Okay.
What is the future of Kevin and Black? Because that's where we kind of end at in this movie. Are they together? Is it like, we kind of resolve what this is? Because in theory, the last time that we saw them was my man was getting arrested. You know what I mean? And, then it's been 10 years and my man is HGH'd out. He's using that TRT. So, what is it? What we got there?
I like that ending a lot because it shows that Kevin is sorry. Kevin has regret. Kevin has probably had grief from how their relationship ended, and it really just captures closure. I don't even know if it's so much about did they stay together versus were they able to heal wounds from each other, and was there an acceptance of closure from that?
Does he start trapping in Miami?
I know he's just going to start cooking. Like Kevin will make the edibles in the back at the restaurant. Like,
I got this new crack. Now that would be amazing. But I like how he tells him. He's like, "Yeah, you're the only person that's ever touched me." And I was like, "Oh," I was like, "All right." Like,
yeah, that was like a very like intimate moment. I think it's also interesting because Kevin has like really known Sharon at this intimate level.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to say. And I like that this movie doesn't have a sequel and it doesn't look to continue to explore this relationship. And I think it shows the complexity of relationships, whether you are straight or gay, or even like where you fall on the spectrum. I think it shows that like love is complex.
I mean, Sunlight 2 Sunlight's gotten greenlit, so it's fine. It's coming soon.
Oh, for real?
No, I'm kidding. That would be amazing. It's just like, how you did Before Sunset, Sunlight. It didn't, Juan is alive because he's Blade, right? But he dies in it because he's also a vampire. Sorry. That is ridiculous. That is ridiculous.
Not the goddamn Moonlight Marvel continuity film. Like, what's that?
We gotta
the
make it
end
happen.
credits are Kevin, like, opening up a shop in Wakanda or something.
He's like, you just hear his voice like in the Eternals. Hey, I wouldn't touch that if I was you. It's like his drug box.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we put Juan's ashes in here. We didn't dump him out in the sea near Cuba. We put him in here, and now he's making up the next strand. I don't know. I can't greenlight
Somebody
movies.
comes in and is like, I'm looking for black.
I want to tell him about the Miami 305 initiative.
Oh my God. That's chaotic. I love it.
It's really stupid, I know. So here's the last thing. Final verdict on your scale, on the CJC scale, if you will. Ooh. What would you give this movie? Out of what's your scale, and would you give this movie?
All right, you know what? I'm gonna give it a scale out of 5.
Sure.
Out of 5, I'm gonna say for me it's 4.5. I think it gets a pretty high rating. I think it's an important film in the like black masculinity identity. If I had to recommend films for people to watch to just understand context without actually being spoken to, perfect for that. It's shot beautifully. It's shot without having too much emphasis on like CGI or like putting the budget or behind the camera, and it really dives into trauma without being trauma porn, which I appreciate, because sometimes black stories can fall in this area where like, are we shooting this to kind of speak on something, or are we shooting this to just kind of show the visuals that this is bad? Which I think there's a lot of that kind of goes on at the moment.
We almost have that, overdoing that sort of resilience thing that's there. And I'm on the same page. I agree with you. I think I think I have a penchant in an appreciation for movies that sort of feel like plays. And I think that there is a space that this could be adapted into a play, and I think that should probably happen. I definitely, it's probably about a 4 to 4.5. And like I said, I usually don't watch, it's rare that I watch movies twice, especially movies that are about 2 hours. It's a challenge for me. I'm looking for how can I trim out the credits to not make this feel like a 2 hour movie. It's like, all right, credits are about 5 to 7 minutes. It's like, all right, unless it's done in the 70s and you're literally getting a 2 hour movie. But I think that works. And some of that that third act dialogue is not good. I was like, this is two people trying to reconnect on it, and it's almost like I was waiting for someone to say lit, and I was like, you both are old. Let's not.
I can see that with the third act.
The movie is good, though. The movie is good, and I kind of wanted that chef special. It's definitely, I'm into Cuban food, make the beans with care. You make sure that the rice is on there on point, getting that JL culinary degree. Let's do it.
I almost expected more from Kevin in the third act, because we had been with Sharon for so long, and it was like, oh, well, Kevin's back. Like, we're going to like really dive into this character. And then we don't really dive that deep into him. Like a little bit.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, other than I'm a dad now, and it's kind of like, sort of that I got the things that I was told I wanted. That's what I kind of took out of his story.
Yeah.
And I didn't really want those things. I think they tried to give us a lot, but it's at the end of the day, it's not his story. It's kind of what I'm taking from it. But I agree with you where, you know, we're ultimately getting to the sort of final boss of forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, all right, we're going to have this dinner. I'm going to take my golds out and drink some red wine out of like some plastic cups.
Yeah. That's the way to do
my
it.
hair is brushed real quick. Yeah. So that's pretty much it for the fine folks listening. I want to, again, thank you for being on this podcast and chopping it up with me. And I want to invite and encourage you to tell people where to check you out, to check out your work and all of that good stuff. It's not necessarily movie related, but I'm sure you have a movie comment here and there so folks can check you out. So let the folks know where they can check you out.
Yeah, Rob, thank you for having me today. It's been great. Hope we can do this again soon. So I'm Christopher Chester. You can find me on Instagram at Christopher J. Chester. I'm also a designer, and you can check me out on my website at ChristopherJChester.com. I'll do a quick little plug as well that I also run a monthly radio show with my best friend Micah E. Wood called Employees of the Month over on Gutsy Radio. You can find all of our episodes on Mixcloud.com. We talk about a variety of different topics from month to month and also share music, hybrid talk show / music show. So yeah, that's where you can find me on the internet.
Thank you. And I'm Rob Lee, Truth in His Art, Truth in His Art. You know, it's a podcast. I do it. Arts and culture. Christopher and Mike have been on there, so it's fine. Yeah, definitely check it out. Check us out next week or so. I don't know when these podcasts come out anymore. Check us out for the next episode of Let's Watch It Again. Share, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And again, thank you.
It seems so good to see you back again. How long has it been?